Last time I was here, they blew my amplifier up and the grill cloth came off on fire. It flew over my head and it landed on the fire marshal's arm from Dallas, Texas. And he stood there like this scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz, like this. Flames are shooting up, feeling like that. He's got it off his arm. And our lighting director left the building for a few hours. I'll never forget it. That was the last time I was in Dallas, Texas. And that was in 1979. So it's good to be back.
Wait a minute, I want to back up a second, sir. I'll let you finish your point. Let me get this straight. So you never worked with Michael Jackson, you never met him, you never wrote a song with him, but you have a songwriting credit on one of his albums and get checks.
Right, I did.
That's like hitting the lottery.
I called BMI and told him to stop sending me checks. And
Oh my
sent
God,
the
you're an
checks
honest
back.
man. That's incredible.
I don't want any money I didn't earn.
But did you get a good, did you at least keep a little bit of it?
No.
How does that happen? Imagine you get a writing credit on him. I mean, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. What else did you want to ask, sir?
I have a question for you. Can you name top 3 rock bands of all time?
My top 3 rock bands of all time?
Yeah.
Wow. Those are always such difficult questions for me. The band that was my gateway band that introduced me to rock music, there's 2. When I was a little kid, I was into like Partridge Family and like teen stuff I'd see, cartoon music, you know. But then I heard this, 10 years old, I heard this a song on my parents' radio in the car when we were going somewhere. The song's called Go All the Way by the Raspberries. And anybody who's ever heard that song knows that it starts out with a very distorted, heavy guitar riff, and there's really busy drums, and then it breaks into this beautiful melodic part, and then slams back in. And that immediately interested me at 10 years old, because I never heard anything like that. So I became like this crazy, at 10, this crazy fan of the Raspberries, and I went to the record store and I bought their albums, and then that was like for about a year that lasted, and then I was walking home from junior high school, and a friend of mine said, we walk by a record store every day, and he said to me, hey, I'm gonna pop in the record store and buy an album, you wanna come in with me? I said, yeah. I said, what are you getting? He said, I'm getting a record by this band called Kiss. And this was 1976, and I'd never heard of him, I was 12. And he went in the bin, and he's like, so I said, what, those guys look crazy, like what's the deal there? He goes, they're really cool. He goes, their new album at the time was a record called Rock and Roll Over. And he said, I don't know how this is because it just came out, but if you want to check them out, get the album before this because I know that one is great. And for Kiss fans, you know the one before that is Destroyer. So I bought Destroyer, took it home, put the needle on the record, looked at the cover, Detroit Rock City, it was like game over. The Raspberries were wearing leisure suits on the cover of their album, and there's Kiss like this, and I was all in. So I immediately became like, those were 2 super important bands for me. And then from there, it went to Aerosmith and Van Halen and Black Sabbath and all that sort of stuff. But, and UFO, who I love to this day, one of my all-time favorite bands. But it started, I got the bug by hearing the Raspberries at 10, and then just went completely over the cliff a year or 2 later when I was introduced to Kiss. So those are 2 really important bands, but above and beyond that, it's, you know, it's UFO, it's Van Halen, it's Aerosmith. Aerosmith was the first band after Kiss that I let into my orbit. Because up till like, after I discovered Kiss for the first year or 2, I couldn't listen to any other bands because they would be a threat to Kiss in my young mind. Like, there is no other band. They can't have competition. All bands must stop existing. And then after a couple of years, I'm like, all right. And I got Aerosmith Bootleg, the live album, and I carved out a little section on my wall that wasn't a Kiss poster, and I put the Aerosmith. That was a big move. Like, okay, I'll let other bands in. So Aerosmith, Kiss, Raspberries, very, very important bands to me. Lamore, sure.
Yeah, I got to talk to you a little bit earlier. I grew up in New Jersey, listening to you on the radio. I was like 13 years old. You would come on at night.
I was even younger. I wish.
I would hit record on my cassette tapes to listen to your shows back then. But anyway, just reading and seeing stuff. Did you work for Megaforce Records at one point? And
Yeah.
can you just kind of elaborate out? Because I was like part of the whole British militia and town
Yeah.
coming in, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's funny because this is Randy was talking about how he started and when he started, and I started in the music industry professionally in 1983, which was the year I got out of high school. And I was just completely consumed with music. And one of my great regrets is I don't play anything. Like, I come to events like this and I'm happy to be here and meet all these great talents like Randy and everybody, but I can't play a note of anything, and it's amazingly frustrating to me. One day when I have the time, I'd love to just learn the basics of guitar. But I took some drum lessons early on, got frustrated, didn't stay with it. I was like, okay, if I'm not gonna play music, I just wanna be in it and in every way possible help support it, promote it, and create platforms for the stuff that I love. So I started writing really early on. I started working at a record store right out of high school. I started doing radio right out of high school, like everything that I could do. And then when I started doing radio in 1983, I was doing what was considered to be a heavy metal specialty show, 3 hours a week on the weekend. And like Randy was saying, when he started doing a tribute show, there weren't a lot of, or anybody doing tribute bands. When I started doing what was called a metal show back then, there was really hardly anybody else in the country doing a show dedicated to hard rock music. There may have been one or two others, but I wasn't aware of them. So I started that, and it made a lot of impact in that area of the country because people couldn't believe what I was playing on the radio and that there was an outlet for it. And there was an import record store that I used to go to called Rock and Roll Heaven, and the guy who ran the import record store, one day I'm on the air, and I'm only doing radio like for 6 months at this point, and the guy who ran the record store comes knocking on the door of the radio station while I'm doing my radio show. I go to the window, I'm like, what the hell's the guy working at the flea market doing at the store, at my door at this radio station? And he had a bag under his arm with a record in it. He's like, you gotta let me in, you gotta let me in. I knew him, so I was like, yeah, come in. And you gotta remember, in '83, when you're on the radio, there's no computers, there's no, like, you can't push a button like you can now, walk away for half an hour. You're queuing up records, you gotta be there when that record ends. If that song's 3 minutes, you better be there to get the next record ready. So I was really scattered and frantic, because I was very new at the time. And he said to me, I'm not leaving until you give me a chance to play this record on the radio. And I was like, well, just leave it. I'll listen to it later. I'll let you know. He goes, no. You don't understand. I'm not leaving until you play this. This is a band I put my whole life into, all my savings, and I need somebody to give them a chance to play them on the radio. He opens up the bag, and that record was Metallica, Kill 'Em All, the first Metallica album. That time, nobody knew who Metallica was, independent record label, and John Z, who was the guy who did this, who founded Megaforce Records, just like, I'm not leaving until you play something from this, please help me out. So I did. I played the song Jump in the Fire, and he wrote on the cover of the record, Ed, you were the first, thanks for believing, John Z. I still have the record, and he left. And when he left, he said to me, if I can ever get this band to break, I'm going to start the record label and I'm going to hire you to work for me. And I was like, yeah, right. Good luck with that. Because I didn't know what I heard. Like, a lot of people ask me, when you heard Metallica like that, I heard The Future? No, I didn't know what I heard. Like, to me, it sounded like it was just, I never heard music that intense. So I didn't think it was good. My early A&R skills, I'm like, that band's not going to go anywhere, right?
It's not commercial.
Yeah, that's like I'm the only nut that's going to play that band on the radio, and that's the way it was for a couple more years. And sure enough, 3 years later, 1986, he calls me up, and at that point I had seen that Metallica had gone on to, they just signed to Elektra Records, they were about to put out Master of Puppets, and he called me up, and he was good to his word, and he said, good news and bad news. Good news is, as you know, Metallica is huge now, and I have, because of my settlement, because he had to get paid out, because he had them for management and record label, so they had to make a settlement, so he got a lot of money paid out when they left him. He goes, so with this money, I'm going to start a record company, I'm going to hire you. The bad news is you won't be working with Metallica because they left me, that's how I'm starting the company. So I'm like, all right, I'm all in. So I was pretty much like one of the first employees for that label, and I was 22, and then I remember thinking, wow, I got it made, I'm going to be making big money working for this cool record company, and the money wasn't great, I was still living at home for a long time, and he gave me the directions to go to the office, and I pull into this residential area, and it was in Old Bridge, New Jersey, and I'm like, I guess we're meeting at his house for coffee before we go to the office. And I walk in, I'm like, where's the office? He goes, see where my daughter's crib is over there? I'm like, yeah. Pull up a phone and sit down next to that crib, that's your office. That's how it started. And then the first thing I did was, you know, at that point the company was very much known for Anthrax, Metallica, Overkill, very heavy stuff, Raven, Manowar, and I was like, I'd like to be able to bring some stuff that we can maybe get played on the radio to the company. So he said, what do you have in mind? Well, reference what we just talked about before, I grew up a huge Kiss fan. So I knew that Ace Frehley was out there, and at that time, nobody would touch Ace because, you know, all the crazy stories, driving the car against the wrong way of traffic, and drugs, alcohol, he was viewed as a liability. Nobody would touch him. And I said to John, who was not a Kiss fan, I said, we should try to find him because I think he'd immediately sell records and maybe he's in a better place. And we did, and that was the first artist I signed. To this day, I'm still super close with Ace. I was just at his birthday party a couple weeks ago in Vegas, and we're still very, very close. So it started with Ace, and then we both worked on a band from here in Texas, King's X. We got that signed, and then I signed a couple bands that unfortunately didn't go anywhere. But by like 23, I was vice president of the company. I stayed there for about 4 years, and that's my story of the label end of my career. And it was fun. It was a great experience. But around 90, 91, John's focus started changing more into managing bands than worrying about the label. So we just kind of went different directions. I went more into radio, he went more into management. But I still talk to him, we're all good.
That's a great story, it really is.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pretty, when Metallica went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they invited 100 people to the induction. And they had a huge party at the House of Blues in Cleveland the night before. And when I say invited, they didn't just say, we'll give you a ticket. They flew everybody, put everybody up, and they were nice enough to invite me. And they had at their party the night before the induction, they had people get up at a podium like this and tell stories. And I told that story. And Lars and James came up to me and they were like, we never knew that. Like, we've known you all that time, but we never knew that was where the connection came in. So it's pretty cool. How you doing?
Hello, my question is for Randy. First, I want to say a big fan, been wanting to see you for a long time. And I have two quick, easy questions. What gauge strings do you use? And are your knobs reversed? Your volume knob and tone knobs, are they reversed?
On my lefty,
Yes.
yeah, I had to reverse them. The Hendrix model, though, is reversed already. But any other lefty that I had that wasn't a Jimi Hendrix tribute model, I had to reverse myself, yeah.
And what gauge?
And the gauge strings, I used 9 through 46. I used to use 10s, but I got tendinitis.
I'm going to come check you out somewhere, Seattle somewhere.
I know.
nearby.
Check them out right here in a couple hours, man. Your mind will be blown. I'm telling you. Randy, I know this is probably an impossible question for you, but what's your favorite Hendrix song to play?
It's called 1983, A Merman I Should Turn to Be.
Why is it your favorite?
Because it goes through so many changes. It has a fast part, it has a slow. It really encompasses just about everything that Jimi ever did, and it's very surreal. The whole song is surreal. It's about going under the water and living underwater in a big city that's down.